The Red Bull saga that started roughly around this time last year is set to be finished, as the team boss has been acquitted internally twice last year and is yet to appear in front of the court. The employee who accused Horner of the inappropriate behaviour is not falling down. Quite the contrary, she decided to take further steps, and a court session has already been scheduled for 2026. With all this in mind, should we consider Red Bull as a team in huge problems because it all started from the internal power shift within the Austrian team? And if so, is this the last straw for Verstappen's future in the team? One of the most controversial topics last year was definitely the Christian Horner Red Bull saga, where an employee went behind his back and reported an inappropriate behaviour from the CEO of the team directly to the headquarters in Austria. This got a lot of attention from the entire F1 world, of course, especially from the shareholders of Red Bull, who decided to launch a separate investigation by hiring an outside lawyer to look into these matters properly. To make matters worse, Jos Verstappen has been the one who supported the employee and went behind Horner's back, stating that as long as Horner remains in charge of the team, everything is going to hell with them and a lot of high-profile engineers will leave. That, of course, is exactly what happened. Horner remained in charge, being cleared from all of the allegations made against his name, while engineers like Newey, Courtenay and Wheatley decided to leave the team after being on board for around 2 decades. But the era of Horner was far from over. He managed to convince the Austrian side of the shareholders, the one that holds 49% of the company's rights, that he is the right man for the job, and initially securing the trust of the 51% of the tie-backed side of the team. Be that as it may, though, the situation is now far from over. From what Eric Van Haren is reporting, there will be a lot more regarding this case because the female employee in question has filed a complaint in which she wants to take further steps in the case. She was obviously highly disappointed that Horner was found innocent, and while the team didn't want to comment on her employment status, the fact that they dismissed her appeal has been perceived differently from everybody on the grid, including other team bosses like Zak Brown and Toto Wolff. But nevertheless, there seems to be a hearing scheduled in January next year, but the bad thing is that the British media have been banned from reporting on the case for months because there are fears that the bigotry would be too big and misinformation could be spread very easily throughout the F1 paddock. This is the last thing that Horner and the accusing part of the legal party need, which is why Red Bull might be a bit worried about what comes next. Whether we like it or not, the support that Horner has in the team might be reduced after all of the latest happenings, and the thing that he will hate the most is that Jos and Marco are going to be feasting on this court hearing as much as they can because they were the first ones to prey on the downfall of Horner. When talking about the internal tensions in Red Bull, Jos Verstappen couldn't have been more adamant about how negatively Horner impacts the team. He explained, "What the team boss does or does not do, that does influence everything that is going on around the team and therefore around Max. Of course I get involved in that. I see it all happening and I do think I am in a position to say something about it. If I am put on the spot, I will give my opinion. I will never harm Max. I look at the overall picture. At the end of the day, I stand by everything I said." And it does look like after the latest departures from Red Bull, the power from Horner onto the team is not as big as we could have imagined. Both of the shareholders might have understood that the Brit is doing more harm than good, even though he's been part of this project since day one. But to lose 3 high-profile members in such a short span of a couple of months, including Newey, who will likely make Aston Martin the new powerhouse, then it is inevitable that you'd rethink the choices that you need to make in the following period. Jos was also very clear that while it seemed like Marco had stepped down a bit, the latest situation with Verstappen winning the championship in the 3rd fastest car gave them a bit more power to talk about what is going on in the team and which direction is the proper one to move forward. Elaborating on this situation further and talking about the team's unity moving forward, Jos said, "I do have the feeling that there is more stability at the top of the team at this stage. Top advisor Helmut Marko also seems to have more say again, which I think is a good thing. The team is now growing a bit more together again." But again, the situation was depicted very clearly from Jos, and while we believed he was the villain in this entire story, it does seem like high-profile engineers were growing sick of the internal tensions and didn't want to work further with the leadership of Red Bull. On top of that, the fall in performance was more than visible as the RB20 turned out to be quite a failure when it comes to the mid-season development war, where Verstappen went 10 races in a row without a win. You can't pin the blame solely on one person person, Horner in this case, but according to Joss, the fact that Horner remained in position has definitely put a lot of strain on the team, and there will be mass exoduses left and right. When warning about this right before the departures were made official, Joss said, "It can't go on the way it is. It will explode. There is tension while he remains in position." Right after Courtenay's departure, Joss confirmed that that is what he warned everyone about, and while Horner tried to downplay this situation and make sure that it wasn't affecting the team as much as the media believes because it's taken out of proportion, this was not the attitude of Joss, who stated, "The team then says, oh, it doesn't matter, we have someone else who we can put on that position, but it's too many people leaving now, and Max gets questions about it every time," and so on. So yeah, I think it's just not good what's happening at the moment. Horner always glosses over it. But the hard part for Horner is that the results from the car are not delivering nearly as much as they should be, and the RB21 doesn't seem to be the most competitive package from what we saw in the 3-day pre-season testing in Bahrain. In the beginning of the 2024 season, the 5-win streak from Verstappen kind of glossed over all of the problems that Red Bull had in their internal circles, but on the other hand, the situation got worse once Newey announced his departure from the Miami GP onwards, and coincidentally, McLaren brought a very competitive package of their own on that race. Prior to that, Verstappen was always loud and clear that there is something wrong with the car that will sooner or later reflect on his results, but the team and the engineers didn't seem to believe him because they had this picture for Verstappen that he's going to win regardless of how much the others catch up. Now it's up to us to see how the court hearing for Horner will shake things up in Red Bull, because in combination with the on-track performance, the odds seem to be stacked against him, and it's a clear verdict as to what the future holds for Verstappen as well. The 4-time world champion has been loud and clear: if the team is unable to build a winning car, then he is out of the team. On top of that, he's stated that his closest allies in Red Bull are his father and Marco, and he didn't bluff when he said that if Marco gets out of the team, Max and Joss are following along. This might be one of the reasons why a tectonic shift is preparing in the Austrian squad, and whether we like it or not, it's a reality that could put Red Bull in a very bad position. All of these questions will be answered either in January 2026 or maybe sooner if the RB21 fails to be in the top 3 teams on the grid. Again, Bahrain didn't really show too much, and both Verstappen and the technical director Pierre Wash were adamant that a lot more work needs to be done in order to get the car in the perfect operating window. With such competitive Ferraris and McLarens, I highly doubt that Red Bull can make such a big leap, and it will be again a one-man season in which they would solely rely on Verstappen to fight in the Drivers' Championship. With all this in mind, what do you think about the internal power struggle in Red Bull that is far from over? And more importantly, do you think that Horner can get away from it unharmed once more in the court hearing in 2026? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're interested in Newey's latest decision regarding Aston Martin's project, make sure to check out the video that appears on your screen right now.